Question 1. The total cost of a flight between two cities is made up of three parts: a basic cost, taxes, and a booking fee. Last year, for any flight, the basic cost and the taxes were in the ratio 3:2 and the booking fee was fixed at $50. This year, the basic cost of a flight has been increased by 20%, the taxes have been increased by 10% and the booking fee has been halved. What is the new total cost of a flight that last year cost a total of $330? The correct answer is C. This is because last year, for any flight, the basic cost and the taxes were in the ratio 3:2 and the booking fee was fixed at $50. If the total cost of a flight last year was $330, we can deduct $50 for the booking fee, leaving $280 to split into 5 equal parts of $56. According to the ratios given, the costs last year would have been: basic cost equals 56 times 3 equals $168, taxes equals 56 times 2 equals $112. We are told that basic cost increased by 20%, so it would now be 68 times 1.2 equals $201.60. Taxes increased by 10% on the previous year. 112 times 1.1 equals $123.20. We are told that the $50 booking fee has been halved, so this would now cost $25. Based on these calculations, the new total cost of this flight would be: new total cost equals new basic cost plus new taxes plus booking fee. New total cost equals 201.6 plus 123.2 plus 25 equals $349.80. Question 2. The rise of the internet-connected smartphone and similar devices poses a risk to the ties that bind us together within society. It is true that for many people, these devices provide ready access to a wealth of information and help them to maintain existing interpersonal relationships and to develop new ones. Yet the devices can also act as a significant obstacle within one of the most important relationships of all, that between a young child and his or her caregivers. With many users of smartphones checking them hundreds of times a day, psychologists are increasingly worried about the potential cyber effect of parents and others shifting more of their attention away from the young children around them. Eye contact and other features of face-to-face real-world interaction are essential for the social and emotional development of young children. Which one of the following, if true, most strengthens the above argument? Option A. In previous generations, families across the world tended to have larger numbers of children. Option B. Internet-connected devices help some people who find face-to-face interactions difficult cope better with day-to-day life. Option C. More young children are now being entertained with videos and other content on smartphones rather than being encouraged to interact with people around them. Option D. In 100 years or so, many households in both poor and rich countries will own robots that are capable of interacting with us as if they were human. The correct answer is C. This is because the main argument of the passage is that smartphones may be harming out interpersonal relationships and ability to interact face-to-face. Question 3. The table shows details of 6 hire cars. I will need to hire a car for my holiday and I have a number of requirements. I want to pick up the car at the hotel at the beginning of the holiday, but drop it off at the airport at the end of the holiday. The car must have a sunroof and aircon. However, I do not want a car above 1,600 cc, and I can only afford to pay up to $160 for 7-day hire. Which one of the 6 cars suits my requirements? The correct answer is C. This is because, pick up at the hotel and drop off at the airport, this rules out the Ashler model. Must have a sunroof and aircon. The only 2 models that have both are the Chronal and the Elox. Not above 1,600 cc. Both the Chronal and Elox satisfy this requirement. Up to $160 for 7 days. As the Elox is $180 for 7 days and the Chronal is $150, the Chronal would be the car that suits all of the requirements. Question 4. It never fails. The only time both political parties are willing to work together in the US Congress is when they're cooking up really bad ideas. If they've found a new way to cause trouble, reduce freedom, or generally damage the health of the nation, they work together just fine. This time, the brilliant idea is a sales tax on goods bought on the internet, similar to the current sales tax imposed upon goods bought in physical stores. If the economy is to get stronger, charging consumers more is not a wise move. A tremendous number of people buy online, and if the cost of buying online increases, internet sales will go down, and companies will sell fewer products and have lower profits. Net tax receipts will therefore be less, which means that states and the federal government will collect less revenue, and have less to spend on things like education and healthcare. This is why an internet sales tax is such an unbelievably bad idea. Which one of the following best expresses the flaw in the above argument? Option A: it attacks the people who came up with the idea rather than the idea itself. Option B: it fails to take into account the possibility that people who would have bought online will buy from physical stores instead. Option C: it wrongly proceeds on the basis that the economy will suffer only if sales fall. Option D: it assumes that, if internet sales fall after introducing an internet sales tax, then the introduction of an internet sales tax will have been the cause of the falling sales. The correct answer is B. This is because the flaw in this argument is that the author assumes that a decrease in online sales will reduce overall sales and profits, neglecting the point that people may buy from physical shops instead if this tax were to be introduced. Question 5. The transparent box shown below has identical arrows painted on one pair of opposite faces. Which one of these nets will not fold up to make the box? The correct answer is B. This is because the arrows are diagonal on the smaller faces, on opposite faces to each other, and in opposing directions. All of the nets would fold up to make the box, except B. In net B, the arrows would be facing in the same direction, so would not fold up to make the box. Question 6. How much value does a particular new product or service bring to our lives? This is hard to quantify, and yet traditional economics has provided us with a neat means for doing so. Look at how much it costs. In a free market economy, how much something costs tells us how much people are prepared to pay for it. And how much people are prepared to pay for something is a direct sign of how much they value it. The problem with this model, using the market price to assess value, is that it is starting to break down with new technologies. Many of the products and services we value most, including popular apps and social media platforms, are provided for free. While there may indeed be a cost, such as a loss of privacy, this is not a financial cost. Which one of the following statements is best supported by the above passage? Option A: it is impossible to measure the true value of any given product or service. Option B: there is no such thing as the true or real value of a given product or service. Option C: we need to find alternatives to using cost if we want to measure the value of a product or service. Option D: if we want to determine the actual value of a product or service, there are more serious costs to consider than merely financial ones. The correct answer is C. This is because the main argument of this passage is that the value of a product or service cannot simply be assessed by the financial cost, as there may be associated costs that do not involve the exchange of money. Question 7. A medical consultant devises a test to diagnose the presence or absence of a particular disease in children. After many years, the test proves itself to be 90% accurate. In other words, on 10% of tests done on children who do actually have the disease, the test will erroneously indicate that they do not have it. These 10% of tests are known as false negatives. Similarly, on 10% of tests done on children who do not actually have the disease, the test indicates incorrectly that they do have it. These 10% of tests are known as false positives. The hospital serving a small town tests 1,000 children for the presence of the disease. The table below provides the results as expected in terms of the test's 90% accuracy level. If a child has a positive test result, what is the probability that they do actually have the disease? The correct answer is E. This is because the total number of positive test results was 164. Of these 164 patients, 72 actually had the disease. Therefore, if a child has a positive test result, the probability that they actually have the disease is 72 in 164. Answer E. Question 8. Which one of the following could be drawn as a conclusion about the role of discrimination in the gender pay gap? The correct answer is E because the passage discusses that discrimination probably plays a role in the gender pay gap, but that the extent of this is not yet known. Therefore, this conclusion can be drawn from the information given, and is the correct answer. Question 9. What were the approximate average weekly earnings of women in full-time employment in 2017, assuming that the numbers of women and men working full-time are the same? The correct answer is D. This is because we are told that the average weekly earnings of all employees in full-time employment in 2017 is £550, and that the gender pay gap was 9.1%. As we are asked for the approximate earnings, we can use an approximate value for the gap of 10%. Again, because this approximate, we can assume that men earn roughly 5% more than £550 and women earn approximately 5% less. So the approximate weekly earnings of women would be £550 minus 5% of £550 equals £550 minus £27.50 equals £522.50. The answer that best reflects the approximate average weekly earnings of women in full-time employment in 2017 is £525. Question 10. Figure 1 indicates that one of the factors that partly explain the gender pay gap is tenure, length of time in current post. Which of the following statements are consistent with this finding? Statement 1. Women tend to have longer tenures than men, and the longer someone's tenure, the greater their average hourly earnings. Statement 2. Women tend to have shorter tenures than men, and the longer someone's tenure, the greater their average hourly earnings. Statement 3. Men tend to have longer tenures than women, and the longer someone's tenure, the smaller their average hourly earnings. Statement 4. Men tend to have shorter tenures than women, and the longer someone's tenure, the smaller their average hourly earnings. The correct answer is H. This is because if Statement 1 were the case, women's earnings per hour would tend to be greater than men's. Therefore, this would not be consistent with the finding of a gender pay gap due to tenure. If Statement 2 were the case, women would have lower average hourly earnings than men, due to their shorter tenure. Therefore, this statement would be consistent with the finding of a gender pay gap due to tenure. If men had longer tenures and the longer the tenure, the smaller the average hourly earnings, this would result in lower average hourly earnings for men. Therefore, this would not be consistent with the finding of a gender pay gap due to tenure. If men had shorter tenures than women and longer tenure represented smaller average hourly earnings, this would result in lower average hourly earnings for women. Therefore, this statement would be consistent with the finding of a gender pay gap due to tenure. So, statements 2 and 4 are consistent with this finding. Question 11. Between 1997 and 2016, the average hourly earnings of men working full-time rose by approximately 75%. Assume that the numbers of women and men working full-time were the same during this period. By approximately what percentage did the average hourly earnings of women working full-time rise in the same period? The correct answer is E. This is because we are told that the average weekly earnings for full-time employees were £539 and that the gender pay gap was 9.4%. As we are asked to give the approximate value, we can take the ratio of women's weekly earnings to be 10 to 9. 539 divided by 19 is equal to £62. Therefore, women's average weekly earnings in 2016 is equal to 62 times 9 equals £558. Therefore, men's average weekly earnings in 2016 is equal to 62 times 10 equals £620. We are told that men's average hourly earnings rose by 75% from 1997 to 2016 and know that their average weekly earnings in 2016 was £620. £620 equals 175%. £354.29 equals 100%. So, men's average weekly earnings in 1997 were £354.29. We are told that the gender pay gap in 1997 is 17.4%, so can approximate that women's weekly earnings would be around £290. We can then use this to calculate the percentage rise in earnings for women working full-time. Percentage change equals 558 to 290, 290 x 100 equals 92%. So, the average hourly earnings of women working full-time rose by 92% in the same period. Question 12. A ferry company operates a route between Port X and Port Y with the following daily timetable. The crossing takes 2 hours and 30 minutes, and the ferries need to spend at least 1 hour in port to unload and reload before their next sailing. The ferries operate throughout the day, and ports X and Y are in the same time zone. How many ferries does the company need to operate this timetable? The correct answer is C. This is because we are told that the crossing takes 2 hours 30 minutes and the ferry needs to stay in the port for an hour before it can make a return journey. Therefore, if the first ferry, A, leaves port X at 0000, the earliest that it could leave port Y would be 3:30. Ferry A could therefore be used again for the 3:45 departure from port Y if the second ferry, B, leaves port Y at 0:45, the earliest it could leave port X on a return journey would be 4:15, therefore ferry B could be used again for the 4:30 departure from port Y. This means that there are 5 departures, 0000, 0:45, 1:30, 2:15 and 3 o'clock, that would require 5 different ferries before the company could start using the same ferries again. As the timetable follows the same timings for the day, 5 ferries would therefore be needed to operate this timetable. Question 13. The standard price for a cup of coffee in Italy is €1, about £1, but in the UK you can be charged as much as £4. But why? The biggest part of the cost of serving a cup of coffee certainly isn't the coffee. The most significant cost is staff wages, though in fact that's not the key difference. It's the difference in drinking culture that has the greatest effect on the difference of the price of a cup of coffee. British coffee drinkers spend far longer on a coffee than Italians, who order a coffee at the bar and drink it standing up, allowing Italian cafes to make more sales for the same costs. The opposite extreme is in Greece, where people sit over a single coffee for hours. As a result, Greece has some of the most expensive coffees in Europe, despite having lower wages. Which one of the following best expresses the main conclusion of the above argument? The main conclusion of the passage is that the difference in drinking culture has the greatest effect on the difference in the price of a cup of coffee. Therefore, answer B is correct. Question 14. Terence drew the bar chart below to represent the sales from his shop on each day from Monday to Friday last week. He also drew the following pie chart, but forgot to include one of the days. Which day was missed out on the pie chart? The correct answer is C. I will now explain why. From the bar chart, you can see that the sales for each day of the week were: Monday was 80, Tuesday was 30, Wednesday was 100, Thursday was 120, Friday was 70. If Terence hadn't forgotten one of the days, the total would be 400. From the pie chart, you can see that 2 of the days make up 50% of the total and the other 2 days make up the other 50%. If Monday was the missing day, the total sales in the pie chart would be 320, 400 minus 80, so you would need 2 days to sum to 160 sales, which isn't possible with the numbers 30, 100, 120 and 70. If Tuesday was the missing day, the total sales in the pie chart would be 370, 400 minus 30, so you would need 2 days to sum to 185 sales, which isn't possible with the numbers 80, 100, 120 and 70. If Wednesday was the missing day, the total sales in the pie chart would be 300, 400 minus 100, so you would need 2 days to sum to 150 sales, which is possible with the numbers 80, 30, 120 and 70. i.e. 120 and 30 on the left, 80 and 70 on the right. You could check in a similar way that the pie chart isn't possible if either Thursday or Friday is the missing day. You may also have been able to do this quickly by eyeballing the data. The right-hand side of the pie chart is clearly 2 numbers that are close together, so 80 and 70. The left-hand side of the pie chart would also have to add up to 150, which can only be done with 120 and 30. Question 15. People seem to love words that give a sense of size, terms like umpteen and zillion. These terms are referred to as indefinite hyperbolic numbers, indefinite, because they do not represent actual numbers, and hyperbolic because they are used to imply a larger size than the reality. What's interesting is that everyone roughly agrees on the size these vague terms refer to, and that is because there are language models that underpin the terms and allow a general understanding of their meaning. For example, the word umpteen has a generally agreed meaning of big, but not bigger than 100 using the language model, teen, from the 2-digit numbers 13 to 19. and the indefinite hyperbolics gazillion and badzillion use ga and bar as intensifiers to the root word zillion, itself an indefinite hyperbolic, to suggest a number more than a billion or even than a zillion. Which one of the following could be drawn as a conclusion from the above information? The correct answer is C. The main conclusion is that despite these terms being considered as vague by some people, there are rules, as outlined in the passage, that actually allow for a better understanding of the word than some people initially believe. Therefore, C is the correct answer. Question 16. The table below shows the results of an eye test carried out on the population of a small village. The bottom row of the table shows the percentage of each gender group that were able to read the bottom line of the eye test chart. What percentage of all those tested could read the bottom line of the chart? The correct answer is A. This is because the percentage of all those tested who could read the bottom line is the sum of those who could read the bottom line in each category divided by the sum of all those tested, multiplied by 100. Those who could read bottom line, 28% of 50 plus 32% of 50 plus 12% of 200 plus 18% of 150 14 plus 16 plus 24 plus 27 equals 81. The total number of people tested equals 50 plus 50 plus 200 plus 150 equals 450, so the percentage of all those tested who could read the bottom line is 81 450ths x 100 equals 18%. Question 17. During World War I, 1914 to 1918, 300 British soldiers were executed by firing squad for the offences of desertion and disobeying an order. To later generations, these sentences seemed so severe that a movement was set up to exonerate the executed men. Prolonged debate took place within the UK government about whether it was appropriate to issue a legal pardon. Wisely, it was decided that this was not appropriate. Too much time has elapsed for individual cases to be reviewed fairly, and a blanket pardon that made no distinctions between individual circumstances would be no more just. Social norms have changed so much that there can be no reliable evaluation of judgments made under the terrible circumstances of the war. Which one of the following is an assumption underlying the above argument? The correct answer is D. This is because from the passage, the author assumes that some of the death sentences handed out during the war may have been more deserved than others, when this may or may not have been the case. Therefore, answer D is the correct answer. Question 18. Jasper's school bag can carry up to 5 books. He stores the rest of his school books in his locker. He can visit his locker before school, at break time, and at lunchtime to change the books he carries in his bag. The tables below show his timetable and the number of books needed for each of his lessons. Each subject has completely different books. On which day does Jasper not need to visit his locker at break time? The correct answer is D. This is because we are told that Jasper can carry a maximum of 5 books at one time and that he can visit his locker before school, at break and lunchtime. On Monday, Jasper has 3 books for maths and 1 for English. He would then need 2 books for history, which would take him to 6 books, but he can only carry 5. So, he would need to visit his locker on a Monday at break time. On Tuesday, Jasper has 1 book for music and 2 for science. He would then need 3 books for geography, which would take him to 6 books, but he can only carry 5. So, he would need to visit his locker on a Tuesday at break time. On Wednesday, Jasper has 3 books for maths and 2 for history. As he can only carry 5 books at once, he would need to go to his locker at break time to swap over books so that he had room for his 2 science books. On Thursday, Jasper has 1 book for music and 1 for English. After break time, he has maths, which he has 3 books for. Therefore, he could carry these 5 books at once and wouldn't need to return to his locker at break time on a Thursday. So, this is the correct answer. On Friday, Jasper has 1 book for art and 3 for geography. After break, he has science, for which he needs 2 books. This would mean he would not be able to carry these 6 books, so would need to return to his locker on Friday at break time. So, the only day that Jasper does not need to visit his locker at break time is Thursday. Question 19. Which one of the following is the best estimate of the average daily sales of the Mirror in 1992? The correct answer is D. This is because the percentage change in sales of the Mirror from 1992 to 2018 is a reduction of 80%. So the sales in 2018, which were 583,192, represents 20% of the sales in 1992. Therefore the sales in 1992 would have been 583,192 over 0.2. Since we are asked for an estimate, and the answer options are far apart, we can simplify this to 600,000 over 0.2 equals 3 million. So 2.9 million is the best estimate of the average daily sales as we rounded up for the estimation. Question 20. The following unlabeled graph compares the daily sales of 5 of the 9 national daily papers between 1995 and 2015. Which of the 5 lines 1 to 5 corresponds to the data for the Mirror? The correct answer is C. This is because we can see that sales of the Mirror decreased significantly across each 5-year period. Therefore, lines 2, 4 and 5 can be discounted as possibilities as they do not show this trend. We can also see from the data that sales of the Mirror in 2000 were just under double that of sales in 2010. This is the case for line 3, but not for line 1. So, line 3 corresponds to the data for the Mirror. Question 21. Which one of the following, if true, most weakens the argument expressed in the second and third paragraphs? The correct answer is D. This is because the main argument in paragraphs 2 and 3 is that newspapers can influence public opinion, citing the Brexit referendum as an example. Question 22. Which of the following statements are supported by the data in Figure 2? Statement 1. Between 2017 and 2018 the combined sales of the 9 national daily papers fell by between 11% and 12%. Statement 2. In 2016 the sales of the 5 pro-Leave newspapers accounted for more than 70% of the combined sales of the 9 major daily papers. The correct answer is B. How I am going to explain why. Statement 1. Using the data in the table, total sales in 2017 were 6,008,137 and fell to 5,381,969 in 2018. We can work out the approximate sales if sales fell by 11%. 1% of 6,008,137 is 60,000. 60,000 times 11 equals 660,000. Therefore, a fall of 11% would mean sales of 6,008,137 minus 660,000 equals 5,348,137. So, sales could not have dropped by 11 to 12% as an 11% reduction is less than the figure given for 2017 sales. Statement 1 is not supported by Figure 2. Statement 2. We are told in the passage that the following newspapers backed Leave: Mail, Express, Star, Sun, Telegraph. We can calculate their approximate total sales in 2016 is equal to 4.65 million. Total newspaper sales in 2016 were 6.3 million. The share of pro-Leave newspaper sales in 2016 would be 4.65, 6.3 equals 0.74. Pro-Leave newspapers represented around 74% of newspaper sales in 2016. So, Statement 2 is supported by the data in Figure 2. Question 23. As a cricket fan, one of the perks of my job is that my office overlooks Old Bridge Cricket Ground. I have a good view of the playing area, but an ill-placed advertising hoarding means that I can only see the very top of the electronically operated scoreboard. So for a score of 167, I see. There is a match currently in progress. Returning to my desk a few minutes ago, all I could see of the score was. Since then one of the batsmen has scored 4, 6, 4, 6, 6 and 4 from consecutive balls. After the first 4 the part of the score that I can see didn't change. After the first 6 it changed to. It didn't change again until after the third 6, when it became. After the last 4 it returned to. What is the correct score now? The correct answer is D. This is because the original score could be any combination of 2, 3 and 7 given what the cricket fan can see from his desk. After the first 4 was added, what they could see didn't change, so the last digit must have changed from a 3 to a 7. The score is XX7. After the first 6 was added, the last digit would be 3, with an increase in the tens unit. From what we can see of the score, the tens unit could be 0, 8 or 9. However, as what we could see on the scoreboard changed, it must have changed from a 7 to an 8. The score is X83. We are told that what we could see on the scoreboard didn't change until the third 6 was added. Adding 4 points would take us to X87, which would indeed show the same pattern. When the second 6 is added on, we would get X93, which would also look the same to us. After the third 6, what we can see does change. Adding on 6, we know that it would become X99, which does fit with what we can see. Adding on 4, we know that the last 2 digits would be 03 and the hundreds unit would have increased. From what we can see, the hundreds unit would need to be 2, 3 or 7. However, when this hundreds unit increases, we still see the same thing on the scoreboard, so it must have increased from 2 to 3. Therefore, the final score must have been 303. Question 24. The chore of raising young chicks is one some birds manage to avoid. By laying their eggs in the nests of others, they dupe those others into feeding the babies once hatched. Such brood parasitism has been noted in at least 3 groups, namely cuckoos, cowbirds and honeyguides. It provides a good example of convergent evolution, in which unrelated groups with similar ways of life evolve similar adaptations that help them thrive. The adaptation noted in these 3 groups of birds is that the shells of their eggs are significantly thicker than those of the birds they parasitize. To demonstrate that this is an example of convergent evolution, a benefit has to be shown to be associated with the adaptation. In this case, the thicker shells have been shown to provide greater warmth, enabling the parasitic chicks to hatch sooner than the chicks of the host bird, which gives them a greater chance of survival. Which one of the following best expresses the main conclusion of the above argument? The correct answer is B. This is because the passage discusses brood parasitism in cuckoos, cowbirds and honeyguides and explains it is a good example of convergent evolution. Therefore, answer B best expresses the main conclusion of the argument. Question 25. Venus bars cost 30p each, Whiz bars cost 40p each and flaky bars cost 50p each. Nicola spends exactly £2.40 on chocolate bars. Which of the following statements are incorrect? Statement 1. She must have more than one type of bar. Statement 2. She must have at least one flaky bar. Statement 3. She must have 5, 6 or 7 bars altogether. Statement 4. She cannot have an equal number of each of the bars. The correct answer is E. Statement 1 is incorrect because Nicola could have bought 6 Whiz bars at 40p each amounting to £2.40. So, it is incorrect that she must have more than one type of bar. Statement 2 is incorrect because it is incorrect that she must have at least one flaky bar, as she could have bought 6 Whiz bars, as above. Statement 3 is incorrect because the minimum number of bars that Nicola could have is 5 as she could buy 4 flaky bars and 1 Whiz bar. The maximum number of bars that Nicola could have is 8, if she bought 8 Venus bars. So, it is incorrect that she must have 5, 6 or 7 bars altogether. Statement 4 is incorrect because the cost of one of each type of bar is 30p plus 40p plus 50p equals £1.20. So, Nicola could have bought 2 of each type of bar, so this statement is incorrect. Question 26. People often comment on the fact that the sport of swimming has had a relatively high number of new world records set over the past few decades. Many other developments have occurred in the sport during that time, including the manufacture of swimsuits that create less resistance as swimmers move through the water, and improvements in the design of the starting blocks used in races. Even the engineering of swimming pools has evolved. Engineering advancements make it easier to maintain an optimal water temperature and other conditions in the pools where top competitions are held and the time records set. Most recently, computer software was developed that allows elite swimmers to analyze the tiniest part of their movement in the water in order to keep adjusting their swimming strokes. Which of the following can be drawn as a conclusion from the above passage? Conclusion 1. Swimming is likely to have a relatively high number of new world records set over the next few decades. Conclusion 2. Natural ability no longer matters all that much in determining what swimmers can achieve in their sport. Conclusion 3. Technological progress has played a role in swimmers being able to set new world records. The correct answer is C. Conclusion 1 is incorrect because the passage states that swimming has had a relatively high number of new world records set over the past few decades. However, this does not mean that the trend will continue over the next few decades. So, this cannot be drawn as a conclusion of the passage. Conclusion 2 is incorrect because the passage discusses some technological developments that have helped swimmers to set new records in recent decades. However, it does not claim that as a result of this, the swimmer's natural ability doesn't matter much. So, this cannot be drawn as a conclusion of the passage. Conclusion 3 is correct because this is the main point of the passage. It explains that advances in technology have allowed swimmers to continue to set new world records in recent decades. Therefore, this is a statement that can be drawn as a conclusion of the passage. So, only statement 3 can be drawn as a conclusion from the passage. Question 27. George enjoys reading newspapers and is considering whether he should take out any subscriptions. Details of the daily cost and subscription tariffs for each of the 5 newspapers he reads are as follows. George decides he will read at least 3 different newspapers in one format or the other each week. One of these must be the Times, but it doesn't matter which the other 2 are. He wants to read a printed newspaper twice a week. What is the minimum George will need to spend in a year on his newspaper access? The correct answer is D. This is because we are told that one of the 3 weekly newspapers must be the Times. For a paper copy of the Times each week, the cost would be 5 times 52 equals £78, and the cost of the Times online is £60. As George would like to read at least 2 paper copies per week, at least one other paper newspaper will be needed. The cheapest paper newspaper is the Express, at an annual cost of 8 times 52 equals £41.60. The difference between the annual cost of a paper and digital copy of the Times is £18. For it to be cheaper to get a paper copy of the Times and a digital copy of another paper, the difference between the cost would need to be greater than £18. This is the case for the Dispatch newspaper, and it is the cheapest remaining online subscriptions. The cheapest combination is, therefore, a paper copy of the Times at £78, the Express at a cost of £41.60 and an online subscription to the Dispatch at £30. Total equals 78 plus 41.60 plus 30 equals £149.60. Question 28. Many countries are experimenting with legalizing previously illegal substances, including marijuana and heroin. The rationale for the legalization movement includes concerns about the financial and social burden of the so-called war on drugs, which is widely considered to be a failure anyway. But what drug legalization advocates forget is why certain substances were made illegal in the first place. Taking them leads to behaviors that are harmful both to users and to the people around them. For evidence of such effects, we only need to look to Colorado in the USA. Following the state's recent legalization of marijuana, the rates of murder and of violent crime overall increased. This example shows that the drug legalization movement is as dangerous as it is misguided. Which of the following describes flaws in the reasoning of the above argument? Flaw 1. It assumes that because the crime rise in Colorado occurred after marijuana was legalized, the rise was caused by this change in law. Flaw 2. It fails to acknowledge the problems associated with other substances that are already legal and more socially acceptable. Flaw 3. It concludes that drug legalization has negative effects based just on the evidence from one place. The correct answer is E because the major flaw is that the author assumes that the rise in rates of murder and violent crime occurred as a result of legalizing marijuana, which may not have been the case. This describes flaw 1, which is one of the correct answers. Also, a flaw in the argument is that the author makes their conclusion on evidence from only one place. So, 1 and 3 only are flaws in the argument. Question 29. A survey at a leisure center has found that 70% of members use the swimming pool regularly and only 40% use the climbing wall. The following statements have been made. 1. At least 10% of members swim and climb. 2. All members either swim or climb or do both. 3. At least half of those who climb never swim. Based only on the information given, which of the statements, taken independently, could be true? The correct answer is A. Statement 1 is true because as 70% of members swim, 30% must not swim. As 40% climb, at least 10% of members must swim and climb. Statement 2 is true because as 70% of members swim, and 40% climb, this means that 100%, all, of the members could swim, climb or do both. Statement 3 is true because 40% of members climb. At least 10% of members swim and climb. Therefore, it could be true that at least half of those who climb never swim. 30. A recent study found an association between the number of self-help books new mothers read about caring for their baby and the well-being of those mothers, and it goes in the wrong direction. The more books women had read claiming to show how to put babies into feeding and sleeping schedules, the worse they reported feeling. The number of depressive symptoms they reported correlated positively with the number of books they had read. Most of the mothers in the study had used routine-led baby manuals that advise mothers to implement routines of feeding and sleeping, implying that such routines are easy to establish. 1 in 6 of the mothers in the study said the books made him feel like a failure. Which one of the following can be drawn as a conclusion from the above passage? The correct answer is C. This is because the author also went on to say, most of the mothers in the study had used routine-led baby manuals that advise mothers to implement routines of feeding and sleeping, implying that such routines are easy to establish. 1 in 6 of the mothers in the study said the books made him feel like a failure. From this part of the passage, we can deduce that mothers found feeding and sleeping routines difficult, and that these books made them seem easy to establish. Therefore, this is the correct answer. 31. The share price of a company varies each day. The graph shows the share price over a period of 10 days. I buy £6,000 worth of shares in this company in a single purchase during this period, and then sell them again on a later day in the period. There are no costs associated with buying and selling the shares. What is the difference between the largest and smallest amount I could sell my shares for? The correct answer is F. This is because if I bought shares on day 5 for £6,000 and sold them on day 7 or 8, I would get £12,000 because the share price has doubled. If I bought shares on day 2 for £6,000 and sold them on day 5, I would get 60% of £6,000, i.e. £3,600, because the share price is 60% of what it was on day 2. The difference between the largest amount and the smallest amount is £12,000 minus £3,600 equals £8,400. Question 32. According to the findings of the study, what level of alcohol consumption in middle age carries the lowest risk of dementia in later life? The correct answer is C. This is because from the graph, we can see that the hazard ratio, and hence lowest risk of dementia in later life, occurs between 5 and 10 units of alcohol consumption. Although we can't identify the exact number of units from the graph, the only option between 5 and 10 units is 6 units per week, and the lowest point appears to be a little over 5 units per week. 33. The first sentence of the passage proposes a conclusion that the author draws from the information that follows. Which one of the following is an assumption necessary to reach this conclusion? The correct answer is A. This is because the first sentence proposes the conclusion is, not drinking in middle age increases the risk of dementia as much as drinking too much, according to a new report. The key piece of information about the study is that it tracked the drinking habits of civil servants only. Therefore, the author is assuming that the trend observed in this group applied to the general population. So, the assumption is that the relationship between alcohol and dementia risk does not vary with occupation. 34. Based on this information and the findings of the study, what proportion of adults who drink the equivalent of 3 glasses of wine per day in midlife are likely to develop dementia in later life? The correct answer is B. This is because if 40% of the study cohort consumed alcohol at 14 units per week, that would be around 4,000 people. As we are told that 80 of these went on to develop dementia later in life, we can calculate the proportion who went on to develop dementia. 84,000 equals 0.02 adults who drink the equivalent of 3 glasses of wine per day would therefore drink the equivalent of 21 glasses over a week. We are told that 7 glasses of wine equates to 14 units, so someone who drank 3 glasses of wine per day would have a weekly intake of around 42 units, 14 times 3. The hazard ratio for adults drinking 14 units was 1.0, compared to 1.5 for those consuming 42 units. So, if 2% of adults consuming 14 units per week went on to develop dementia, we can use the hazard ratio of 1.5 to calculate the proportion of those who drink the equivalent of 3 glasses of wine per day in midlife that are likely to develop dementia in later life. 0.02 by 1.5 equals 0.03, so 3% of those who drink the equivalent of 3 glasses of wine per day in midlife are likely to develop dementia in later life. 35. Which one of the following, if true, would most undermine the claim in the report that not drinking alcohol in midlife causes as much risk of developing dementia as drinking too much? The correct answer is C. This is because this would certainly undermine the claim in the report that not drinking alcohol in midlife causes as much risk of developing dementia, as it provides a completely plausible reason for this apparent finding.